solving is for the human society. We need to go to them at the beginning. So this is the problem we're trying to solve. Is it the problem? And then this is the way to solve it. Do you think this works? And then they'll give us their inputs, their desires. They'll be like, no, you need to add this. Okay, can I know how this is going to work? So I think that is very, very important. Getting their voices from the beginning. And in cyber and in AI, the ecosystem or the life cycle is well known. It's acquiring, knowing the problem, acquiring the data, working on the data using some algorithm, visualizing, then communicating the results. So I think we should be very keen to involve the people throughout the stages until the communicating of the results so that they can be involved. When people are involved, then the trust starts to come in because they understand what's going on. For now, to most people, AI seems like magic. They're like, okay, just put in there, oh, you see, you can make music. The music's right there. Oh, it can actually make your art. But they need to understand behind because they are very concerned. So the next thing I think, apart from human-centered design, I think is, as the others have said, is just being able to be transparent, make it explainable, make it simpler, to them so that they can actually understand. And then the policies, the governance, I think people trust AI if they know that, okay, if anything goes wrong, these are the rules, these are the people who will be accountable, and these are the decisions that will be made. It's in the guidelines. It's very clear. And when you go to AI practitioners or maybe data science, cybersecurity, they're not very much concerned about that. They're concerned about the accuracy. What's the accuracy of my model? What is this? How is it working? But I think we need to actually, even in our curriculums, I come from the university, so even in our curriculums, make policy, make ethics, make human-centric AI as necessary things to learn on top of the data science, the technical parts. I think that's very important.
Super, thank you very much. So look, I think we are doing well so far. You had the first 40 minutes or so, lots of food for thought. So now we have 17 minutes and 23 seconds to get the interaction with you. So should we get some questions from the audience to these three fantastic panelists here? And then let's see how we do it time. Let's collect 3 questions first, and then we see if we can get more. So who wants to break the ice? If not, I have other 393 questions here in my folder. No questions? Ezra.
Thank you. It's not a question from me, it's from online participants.
Okay, and so, please, the online participants as well.
So the first question we have here is so the question says, they agree on the argument that cybersecurity can attack every part of global society. And the question's in 2 parts. Does generative AI increase the level of attacks or minimize it? And is the advancement of AI having opportunities to decrease cybersecurity risks?
So if you 3 can remember the questions, let's get 3 and then we get back to you. I see someone there, right? Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Ineka Idiar-Parsoum. I'm an independent consultant advisor in innovation strategy after 25 years in research and development in industry in France. I have a question for Mr. Strubel. You said that you have 40,000 or 60,000 jobs that are without people. And you said as well that you are working in a high school level to increase the number of girls and women in cyber security. But how do you expect to fill this huge gap?
Thank you, very concrete. One more there.
Marisa Monteiro Borsbaum. I'm a privacy and cybersecurity professional. I'm very curious, also related to the cybersecurity jobs. What is being done in the sense of supporting the economical stage of getting talent? We know that we talked about girls or females being afraid, but in my experience of a little bit senior years, I think many women don't have the support, the economical support, the infrastructure that will allow them to enter in careers that, quite frankly, are extremely expensive to acquire any certification. And some of women that I met after investing money that sometimes they didn't have then the companies that took them, because, for example, they were already in the reskilling moment. So are we thinking about how do we support economically these women so they can, in fact, access these jobs?
Thanks. So three interesting questions. One is opportunities and risks vis-a-vis the generative AI, if I understood correctly, the online question. Then there are two interlinked questions. I guess the last one maybe comes first. Is a bit of an economic enabling environment to then get to the second question that was about, well, there are 40,000 estimated deficit, but how then we do to actually fulfill them, right? If I can summarize it correctly. Should we start with you?
Yes, thank you. I'll answer the first question. The other two, yes. So it's a yes and a no. It's actually a yes and a yes. Generative AI definitely increases the attack surface. And I think there's a lot of news going on how now, there's so much attacks in code. Some are saying that while you can actually do review of your code and you can do maybe a vulnerability assessment and realize that everything is good, the next moment you wake up, everything is down. Because someone used AI to actually create their maybe malicious script, and it's attached and it's hidden itself. So you can't even see it, and it's actually just very automated. A live example, right now, everyone is using AI to actually code. We know this, and to do all this. So the other day, one of the projects that we are working on, a person raised this alert that there was an attack that we all know on React, remote code execution on React, and it was everybody was encouraged to patch. It's on a programming language actually called React, so everybody was encouraged to patch, and some did that, some maybe did not do that. So it had already entered into this server, and these people said they upgraded, they patched, and then a week later the server went down. And then they were asking, what is going on? They came and asked me, what is wrong? And then the simple answer is because the people who came back to work into that maybe environment, they were using generative AI. It's simpler, of course, to use generative AI. It's simpler to use all these tools, but it heavily increases the attack surface. So now there's a trend that we are saying we need to fight AI with AI. So even our cybersecurity solutions need to actually now be developed through AI. So we need to already know that we are living with the attackers, we are living with these vulnerabilities. How do we actually move around and shield ourselves from them within the code, within the environment? So it's important to say the truth that generative AI does increase the attack surface so that we can move to solutions that are intelligent. We cannot still live on proactive solutions that, when the attack happens, we need to predict this, and we need to already think of ways on how, the work I'm doing with the Organization for Women in Science, in developing countries, we are actually looking at threat modeling, and we are looking at predicting. For example, we know the path for the attackers or the phases that will take. So we can tell you right now that this attack, even if it started from here, maybe in a predicted time or predicted environment, it will propagate to the third stage. Maybe it will now start to take data from your environment. So it's important we up our training and capacity building. And so I think sometimes I've seen AI people being AI and cybersecurity being cybersecurity. Now I think these things are coupled. They are together. It's like they are married. So it's important that cybersecurity people start to embrace AI and they look at it and also think like the attackers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, very interesting. Melanie, you want to add to these or to any other of the questions?
Well, I think Elena answers the question beautifully, so I have not much to add. But as any new tools, we have to learn to adapt to it because everything is changing around us with it. So yes, it increases surfaces of attacks and attacks themselves, but it also increases solution. But I also think it's important that we don't forget how to learn and just learn without AI, because if we depend too much on it, if it's down, maybe in a scenario where if it's down, we don't know how things were built, and it's just kaput.
Thank you. And do you want to comment anything on the question of the economic incentives that should be in place?
Honestly, I don't know much about this, so I don't think I can answer correctly this question. We're more for Vincent, but I know there's still a lot of associations that can help with the part of money with for people who have problems in installation in cybersecurity.
Thank you, Massa.
Je peux essayer de,
Yes.
de couvrir les trois questions.
Going to try and answer all three questions. So when you talk about Gen AI, what has been said before, I will say the same. AI is not going to change our balance if we remain cautious. Of course, people are better at attacking, and they're really fast at adapting to evolutions of these technologies, but we also need to understand that this is a human issue. To come back on what has been said before, at my agency, 24/7, there are people that pick up the phone and help victims of cyber attacks. And the first skill that these people use are human skills. The ability to talk to somebody that is crying, that is stressed out, that sees his or her company being attacked. So first we need to understand and then take care of the technical aspect of it. And AI cannot do it as well as humans do it. Now, when it comes to the amount of people we need in the cybersecurity sector, well, on economic incentives, I'll remain cautious because in France we have very affordable training programs. But I believe this is not the case everywhere else in the world, so I'll remain cautious with what I'm saying. But we are missing so many people in cybersecurity. So it is an issue that men or women have to pay a lot of money to be trained in cybersecurity and still don't find a job. So we need more people that are trained in cybersecurity. We're working at middle, high school levels to talk about these jobs and how diverse they are, because cybersecurity is not just about what you think about in the first place. It could be about the law, it could be international relations, it could be crisis management. So the goal is to attract more people towards cybersecurity. We need to train. We have to offer vocational training for workers. It's not just about the young people that are recruited in the sector. When I started in cybersecurity, there was no training available. So we all started from the ground up. It can be done, but it's not the best solution. And we have to work with employers as well.
Ça m'énerve de voir à
And it
chaque fois que
makes
je
me
vois
kind
les
of
offres d'emploi
angry
qui
when I
cherchent à
see
recruter
people trying to recruit
des employés en matière de cybersécurité. Il y a quasiment toujours
employees in
10 ans, 5 ans
cybersecurity. They always ask for 5 years of experience. This makes no sense today. And you will not find somebody today that has 5 years of experience. There's not enough people with no years of experience, so you cannot demand that from a candidate. It makes no sense. It is not useful because things evolve so fast. I'm not even sure that somebody with 5 years of experience will be as efficient and effective as somebody with no experience. So we have to do something with employers because they have to understand there's no silver bullets. We need to be a little bit more open because we're missing people. We need to be more open to more diversified profiles so we can recruit in cybersecurity.
So you can see the clock now, how much time we have left. Let me address you one question that I guess summarize a bit the different things we exchanged before when we were preparing for this panel. And then please, if you can, in 1 minute, highlight some key elements. Right now, several actors, but mainly the big technological companies, they are trying to sell a narrative that there is a conflict or a tension between innovate and protect human rights. Saying, well, if there is too much protection of human rights, too much regulation, when I say regulation, is the good regulation, right? The regulation for, then we can't innovate. As you can imagine, in this organization, we don't believe in that. We think that the innovation requires, as a basic principle, the protection of human rights. And this, of course, is very much related to cybersecurity. How are the different elements vis-a-vis other balancing rights, privacy and data protection and freedom of expression and so on. And what you said, development. So how we can, in your view, in your 1 minute, what is your message to say because I'm sure you believe on that we can sell to this narrative that it's possible to innovate while we are protecting the rights of everyone?
Yes, I need to use 1 minute. Yes. The question is very fundamental. Yes, in the world where we are going in right now, maybe before it could be regulation not equal to innovation, or maybe we could not innovate because we are regulating. But for now and moving forward, I think from the beginning, from the morning, we've been seeing how there's the Ignite talk, whereby we saw that if we accelerate, we put on the accelerator and we keep going and we don't know where we're going. And, you know, at the end of it, it's going to be very scary. So, and since the past, we've seen how regulators and policymakers have not been in the room with the innovators. What we are saying that they are both equally important, but they both need to connect and to engage. This is how we shall really realize that innovation and regulation, they all work for the better of human society.
Yeah. Thank you. Melanie?
As Elena said, we're both connected really closely. So we need to find, I think, a balance between the two, because protection is also important, because if nothing is protected, it doesn't have any sense. But if we don't innovate, we'll fall behind, and we also have more risk. So yeah, it's a combination of the two, I think. And we have to talk more about it with people engaging in this. Yeah, I don't have anything much to add to Elena.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vincent?
Moi, je pense que l'opposition entre innovation et régulation
I believe that this opposition between protection and innovation is artificial. I believe that cybersecurity and digital matters in general involves everybody. This is not a specialist and a specialized topic. Cybersecurity is a matter for everybody, because we all will be a victim of cyber attacks. We can be all active actors of that sector. Cybersecurity and digital matters is something that impacts the society as a whole. It is a political issue now. It is an issue to strike a balance between fundamental rights, for example, encrypting, the voting for elections. So, if we want to be a society in a digital world, we need citizens to understand these topics. So we need to educate, to train. Of course, there are 40,000 people that we are missing, but we need citizens to understand these issues so we can be a society altogether. Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the last 1 hour we had this fascinating conversation here about redefining inclusive cybersecurity, women, new technology, and the future of digital trust. And I was honored to be joined by Vincent Strubel, Director General, French National Agency for the Security of Information Systems here in France, by Melanie Marmont, cybersecurity student, Toulouse Innov Campus Security Operations Center analyst, Sopra Steria, here also in France, and Professor Elena Mazico, senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, University of Dar es Salaam, and also 2023 OWST Early Career Fellow, United Republic of Tanzania. So please join me in thanking them again. And I pass the ball back to the organizers. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you.
And we'll just a little group picture, if it works for you. Yes. Okay, well, good afternoon. I personally learned so much from this roundtable, so thank you to the panelists for making cybersecurity accessible and inspiring, and thank you, Guilherme, for the moderation. So, what's the plan now? So the plan is that before we move to our final roundtable, we are going to take a moment. We're going to take a different angle. So my tip to you is sit back, get comfortable, because what comes next is a very special moment. We will basically sort of witness a private conversation between two remarkable women. So we'll have a scientist entrepreneur from Nepal, Pratibha Pandey, discussing with a renowned journalist and entrepreneur from France, Marie-Éloi, which I think will be a perfect reflection of today's objective, which is building bridges. So Pratibha and Mari, that cozy side of the stage, to change a little bit, is now yours. Enjoy this conversation, we cannot wait.
Hi, everybody. I'm very delighted to be here with you today and so happy to finally meet Dr. Pratibha Pandey, who is absolutely amazing. So Pratibha, your journey is very impressive. You are a scientist, an expert in chemistry, nanotechnology, and biotech. You are also an entrepreneur leading two impact-driven companies in Nepal, Catalyst Technology. Mainly, you do research consulting in chemistry and biotechnology. And your second company is Ayurveda Botanicals, an ethical natural skincare brand based on traditional knowledge, local medicinal plants, and science. And you also advise the Nepalese government. And among the many, many prizes you received, you were named South Asia Women Entrepreneur of the Year in 2022. Yes, you can applaud. And last but not least, you have also founded major networks for women scientists and women entrepreneurs. So to know you better, let's discover the key milestones of your journey, because you grew up in Nepal. And were you already attracted by science back then as a young girl?
Thank you, Marie. It's so delightful to be sitting next to you. I was very nervous to be sitting next to a journalist and a TED speaker. So it's amazing to be here in this forum and to tell you a little bit about my milestone and how I got attracted to science. I think how I got attracted to science was when I was little. I was intrigued by the kind of curiosity and logic involved in science. And while a lot of things cannot be solved, I felt like when you look at things from science perspective, you could solve a lot of questions. And when I was looking into how to solve certain questions, I also realized it brings even more complex questions. And it's like a non-ending journey, right? And that's what I was amazed by, the curiosity, the logic, and the journey of just trying to solve problems is something that attracted me. And it was very intuitive for me because I didn't see science in a silo. I saw science everywhere around me, including our being. From periodic table to compounds and helix structure and DNA and then us. So it was very intriguing for me to just imagine, and I wanted to understand how. That's how I got into science.
Sorry, from a very young age?
From young age, I saw Albert Einstein, and I felt like, okay, like everyone was like amazed by him, and my concept of scientist was just Albert Einstein. And then later on, when I started learning about DNA structure and all of this, that's when I was like, oh wow, chemistry is amazing, because it starts from periodic table, and then you move into this entire human race. So that was around when I was probably in class 6, 7, that's when I really thought I could go into sciences.
And then when you finished high school, you decided to travel to the United States to study there?
Yes.
Why did you do this choice?
So I grew up with 3 brothers where I did not see me as this woman and the female, and then them as boys, and we had different abilities. But as I was growing up, when I went into high school, that's when I started seeing differences in boys and girls, and that's where I that's when I heard like, oh, girls are not good in science. I saw a lot of girls being dropped out of school, and when I went to high school, I saw a huge problem in terms of theoretical knowledge versus practical knowledge. I wanted to explore more of science, but after high school, generally we go into becoming doctors or engineers, and I knew for sure that I do not have to decide now what I want to become for the rest of my life. And to escape that, I went to the US to a liberal arts college to study sciences, but also other things.
Because when we prepared this conversation, you told us that many girls in Nepal were quitting school at a very early age.
Yeah. So while I say all of this, one of the biggest elephant in the room that we have not addressed today is that when we say women in science, women from developing contexts, it comes in intersectionality. I come from a privileged group, having been born in Kathmandu, in city. In the rural areas of Nepal, women drop out much earlier. In urban areas also, women drop out from science early on. So I think that's where in your adolescence, the research also shows that women drop out early on.
Because it's more expensive, right?
No, I think they start losing not necessarily interest, but then there is a lot of this narrative around women cannot be as good in science, cannot be engineers and doctors and all of that, where they really take it personally. And for me, I love science so much, problem solving so much, it didn't matter whether I was good or bad. I just wanted to do it, and I think that's how it should be. You don't have to be top of the class, which I was not until I was in grade 9. And yeah.
And how was it when you arrived in the US?
It was a cultural shock for me, but then finally going to a liberal arts college, and until then I was seen as a rebel in Nepal, questioning everything. Why should this should be done this way? Why should I not do this? So going there was like, finally I belong somewhere. I can ask questions, and I don't have to agree with everyone. So it was really nice being in a liberal arts setting in an all women's college. So it was very liberating to do that, and also knowing that science is interconnected with other fields also. It doesn't live in silo, meaning it's in the society, but also it's so interlinked with people and planet and music and art. So that's what I learned in college.
And did you know as well that you wanted to become later on an entrepreneur?
No, I thought I would become this researcher and a professor in this big shot university and just do that for the rest of my life, until second year of my grad school, when I took a management for scientists and engineers course at Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University. And I saw I have this skill of connecting with people. I saw that if you learn soft skills like negotiation, you can negotiate with your professor to publish paper faster. You can work in a team better, and you can accelerate science in a better way if you know these soft skills and management. So then I realized another way of doing science is bringing science to people, to society, and I thought I could be a really good fit for that, because we find very few people who are good in science and still want to do entrepreneurship, because you would want to focus on one, right? So I knew I could do both. That's when.
To have a concrete impact, right?
Yes.
And you always knew that you will come back one day to Nepal to change things.
Yeah. I knew when I left, because right after high school, I saw so much of gap in science education and in education in general. And knowing that I could not stay back if I wanted to be more curious in sciences and pursue my degree in PhD in the forefront of research and technology was really heartbreaking. Being the youngest child in the family, the youngest daughter of 3 brothers, I had a really good childhood, and I would have loved to stay back. But I decided to leave. And when I left, I knew that I would come back to create a platform that I could not enjoy. Right? So I think throughout...
The one you dreamt.
I knew that, and a lot of people said you will change your mind once you go to the US, but for 10 years it did not change. Every single day I would ask myself, with this science degree, what am I going to do in Nepal? How am I going to create this platform? How am I going to do this nanotechnology, semiconductor, all of this, right? And entrepreneurship was a way that led me back to Nepal.
And when you came back, what was the main challenges to create a real impact with your companies?
Yeah, for me, when I came back, I was a pregnant woman, married. So there's this social context associated with that. But I came back with a half-time job of leading for the company I was working in the US in semiconductor industry in Singapore. So I was going to Singapore half-time. I decided to go to outside Kathmandu, because I had not seen anything outside Kathmandu when I was growing up. For me, Nepal was Kathmandu. And I knew more of America than Nepal at that point. So I realized I don't want to have a premeditated solution to a place where I'm not aware of the problems. So I went outside Nepal, met with farmers, did research on medicinal plants, connected with people, connected with my country, understood my roots. And then I decided I want to work first on medicinal and aromatic plants, because I wanted to choose, pace it and then do things that can be done immediately, and so that I can create platform for bigger things in future.
Yeah, because you realize when you arrive there as well many challenges, including waste of many local fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. So that was around. So one of the biggest milestones, I didn't talk about all the milestones or many of them, but then one of the biggest milestones after going back to Nepal for me was I went with this PhD degree, 2 years of work experience, wow, prizes and all of that, 3 patents, US patents, and then I was lost. There was no place to absorb me, for me to do research. I did not want to be in the hierarchy of the, education or industry. So I was really lost. And when I got this OWST, UNESCO OWST fellowship, OWST means Organization for Women in Science in the Developing World, that really brought back credibility, some fund so that I could take risk in Nepal, do research, and also spin off my company. That's when it really started. Like 2 years I was lost.
So this is the importance of funding and giving some grants to
and women
female
network.
entrepreneurs. Yeah, and women networks, of course.
Yeah.
So how did you start your company? What was the first steps?
So Catalyst Technology was started when I realized I was doing work for the same company in Singapore. I realized what I was doing was not contextual to Nepal, although I was earning quite a bit and in a good position. Another, I felt like doing half-time of research. You can't do half-time of research. You have to be fully in it, and I felt like I was being overpaid. That made me extremely uncomfortable. Another is like I came back to do something in Nepal, which I was not doing full-time either, right? So I quit that job and started a company to do consulting on research and chemistry and nanotechnology. And my first job was working with the government of Nepal to go to different remote parts of Nepal and understand the medicinal potential of medicinal plants of Nepal and how to commercialize it. And for me, I saw huge potential, but that was not it. When I met people, the farmers and the collectors of medicinal plants in the supply chain, they were not being paid right, and we were losing the kind of traditional knowledge we have, which is rich, right? Being in drug design in the past, I understood that there's so much of traditional knowledge from mountain to the base of Nepal, and it's so diverse even though country is really small, and I wanted to investigate that as a researcher, and that's when I started research as well as spin-off company through OS support, later as a skincare, and we're also investigating nutraceuticals from the waste collection and all of that also, but beyond that now. Yeah.
And at that time, there were no platform for women scientists or women entrepreneurs?
So for women scientists, so when you look at the developing context, there's no place for men or women anyway, right? And the little space you have, it's mostly occupied by men because there are more men in the decision making. So I think that was the context, and I wouldn't say men or women at that point because it's competitive for the little space. But again, research in a research constrained environment where going back home is generally hard. So I see that not as a challenge, but it led me into opportunity that was more contextual and for me. So I see it that way, and that led me to work with the government, be in the policy advisory group that also I could learn, and then I became the board of trustee of a university where I could also support the design of how higher education should be, especially in the sciences. And being abroad, I definitely could advance sciences and get patents and publication, but being in Nepal was an opportunity to shape how science can create impact in society, and that was really wonderful for me. So I don't see it as a challenge, it's an opportunity. It's not easy, definitely, but it's something that's directly connected to my purpose, so it's wonderful.
So the title of this conversation is Reimagining the Science Entrepreneurship Without Gender Gap. So what would like can we imagine a world without this gender gap?
Yeah.
How would it like? How would it be?
Yeah. So world without gender gap, right? And especially when we are talking about science entrepreneurship. when we talk about this, a lot of time narrative goes around, oh, this is important for humanity, equality is important. But I think beyond that, we heard from the previous speakers also that it makes sense to bring in 50% of the population who are creative to pour their creativity there, right? Why are we, there is a leaky pipe from R&D to commercialization. We should also include women to that. We also know from studies that when we bring in diverse or gender diverse groups together, we have 21% more revenue. So there is this economic bottom line. And research also shows that almost 85% of the consumer spending is sort of regulated by women. So do you want to lose your customer? And we're losing our customer by not designing the system or product or technology for our customers, right? And by doing that, there is this economic opportunity, but also when you include these gender, there is this space for women to grow. And for me, when I look at it, if Prativa Pandey from Nepal had to leave her home at the age of 17 when she didn't want to because she didn't have a platform. If we have a world without gender gap and we have a world without gender gap in science and entrepreneurship, she wouldn't have to leave. And I want my daughters to leave not by force but by choice. So we get more choices as a society when we include women in the narrative, in decision making, and in these kind of conversations, right? So.
This is so important what you're saying, because we always talk about the challenges for women, but not about their strength. And regarding all the crises we are facing, we really need to count on all the forces, men and women, and not only half of the humanity. So thank you, Prativa, for this. In Nepal, what do women network plays as a what is the role of women networks in Nepal?
So I'm part of both Women in Science Network as well as Women in Entrepreneurship. To start with Women in Science Network, we have 2 or 3 very strong Women in Science networks where we support each other in terms of mentorship, training, giving other support. But I really think now we need to shift from mentoring. Someone said in the morning, sponsoring, almost like championing, which means you give them the skills and opportunities, but also introduce them to the right people so that they can get grant, they can commercialize their research and things like that. So that's something that we are aiming towards in sciences, network of scientists, but also in terms of network of women entrepreneurs, right? Another is a lot of times we don't talk about intergenerational and intersectional women forums. When we say women, we cluster it together. We need to look at intergenerational and intersectional forums so that we can really continue our efforts. We can pass the baton because we cannot stop. If we stop, we will go back. So we need to continue the baton and understand the small details of how to navigate a system or a society that is not designed for women, right?
And when did you realize that?
I realized that only after I went back to Nepal, after my PhD, because I was in academics, I was in the US, I didn't really experience that sort of bias, even though I was in a cutthroat semiconductor industry. I had a really amazing team. When I went back, I started seeing that in subtleties of emails that said, "Dear sirs," because I'm the only woman in the email. These are subtle things, but then it gets in your head, you know, and that's when I started realizing there are many things, like you're not invited in a meeting because it's after hour, and then men want to like enjoy their drink and all of that, you know, so there you're not invited, so you miss half the information. When you go to the meeting next day, they've already decided what should be done, right? So that's when I started realizing this. But having said this, I've also utilized male allyship, whether it's at home or outside, where I have acknowledged that I was born and I went back to a patriarchal society where men hold the formal authority, but we can leverage that authority into informal authority as women if we make men as allies or anyone who's a decision maker allies by conversations, by volunteering, which I did, and by creating that sort of safe network where you can leverage that, and I have done that, I think.
And how did you do that? Yeah, we can applaud. And how did you encourage men to be allies? Did you sensibilize them? Did you talk to them?
So a lot of times, not just men, but anyone in power, right? Even government. Bureaucratic system can be really slow and innovation is fast. So they seem very opposite to each other. But I think the first thing is empathy and not antagonizing, right? So a lot of times we go to men and say, we try to antagonize them saying all men are different. We try to cluster men and women. It's not like that, right? And I think when you empathize and when you talk as a human being rather than male or female and slowly understand the other perspective, then only you can inform them of the struggles that you're facing, right? And that's something that I have done. And at the end of the day, when you show as a woman that you can really perform well, there's so little expectations of women that they are so impressed that you become this hero, which which you still try to leverage so that you can bring that sort of network to rest of the women, right? And I don't mind using that, leveraging that sort of, someone said in the morning, you should be doing that because I don't stand as I here. I am a representation of so many roles, right? And I think I do that. And more than men, I don't just rely on men. I think in the past 10 years being in Nepal, I have created this complex trust network with women, entrepreneurs in the quadruple helix, academia, researchers, traditional knowledge healers, government, and also industry partners that it's so complex, no one can understand why they cannot penalize me or vindicate me because it's so complex that they are almost like someone is always protecting, right? So I have built my allies and confidants so that the opponents have to be very careful of attacking you, right? And it takes time. You have to be patient and persistent to build that. Now, finally, I feel like I can grow my company because I've built this network. And that's the part of going back to the developing world. Until and unless you have this trust network, you can do nothing. Right? No matter how much money you have, no matter what, how much knowledge you have, you need to have this network.
Yeah, networks are key. You're absolutely right. I founded the two major female networks for entrepreneurs in France, so I totally agree with you. What can we find in a female network? What does it change when you are an entrepreneur or a scientist to be in a network?
Yeah, so one of the things is, I think, trust. But if you have realized, like all of us have also experienced, we are so passionate about sharing our challenges in the panels and all of that. But I think we should move from obviously the network of sharing challenges into sharing strategies, sharing resources, and sharing the networks we have.
And money.
And money and funding and investors, right? So we need to move from sharing challenges and make that collective pain into action of doing something together. And I think that would be really helpful because the 10 years that took me to create this network, I can share with you within a month, right? So then it accelerates change because we cannot wait 23 years to wait for gender parity. No, we need to do it as much as possible, as fast as possible, and it has to be done in an innovative way. That's the only way.
I want to applaud all the time. So for you, what are the concrete measures to eliminate the gender gap in science entrepreneurship? Networks, men as allies, of course. Do you have another measure?
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes down to money also. And also it comes down to clients. And someone has to buy your product, right? So I think it's about, first is that I think Madam Minister mentioned this, that The global, if you look at the global venture funding, only 2% of women get that funding.
Yes,
right?
only 2%.
Right?
Right.
And one of the, so there is this, it is saying that there is this implicit bias where women are not seen someone who are investable. And in Nepali context, women are seen as liabilities. So we get married to this guy and we go to their family, we have this gold and all of that, but none of the things belong to us or in our name. So where are we bringing this fund from, right? So I think that's where there has to be this first round blind screening or pitch for women, for entrepreneurs in general, so that the bias is not there. Investors have to be trained to see their implicit biases. If you look at big corporations and government, they spend billions of dollars in procurement, in supply chain and all of that. If they can only channel 1 to 2% of that on women entrepreneurs in tech, that already keeps the ball going. Because if you look, at least in Nepal, more than 98% of women are micro entrepreneurs. Jumping from micro to as larger scale or small scale entrepreneur is really hard, because we hit this valley of death. You need to fund, right? And we need cushion or support during that time so that you can take the risk from ideation, R&D, grant money to commercialization or scaling, right? And that's where we need support. And I think all of these measures can really help entrepreneurs to bring in funds. And finally, after 10 years, I was able to bring in partner and investor. A lot of times we give in too early and dilute ourselves too much, that it doesn't become stay woman-led enterprise anymore, because we are so diluted by the time it goes public or becomes big, right? So we have to be very careful from early on. We need support network, business network, to also guide us through that.
And last, if you had one message for young women, scientists or entrepreneurs, what would it be?
I think one message, can I give two?
Yes, of course.
So number one is find mentors, because I have had so many amazing mentors, and especially when I was working in the US, that's when I realized the value of mentors, where this woman who is a vice president in Japan in our company, she came to me and said, can I mentor you?
Really?
She said, can I mentor you? Because I had asked this one question, which was not something that a new recruit would ask in a leadership conference. And she said, can I mentor you? And that changed my trajectory. I got like 3 promotions in 2 years, you know, because she guided me through the, you know, this male-led, not male-led, but then an area, semiconductor, which is full of men, and the boardroom is like only 1 or 2 women, right? So I could really do well because of her and many people like her. So find a mentor. The second thing is, I would say, don't wait to feel ready. We talked about it upstairs also when we were eating. A lot of times we are so afraid of applying to something because we want to be ready 1 more year, and then I will be ready for that job or for that interview or for that grant. Don't wait to be ready, because growth basically, because when you're looking at growth, you have to keep moving, and you will only be confident when you start. Right? So you need to get started, and when you get started, you get rolling, and you are led to the right network, the right people. So just apply. If nothing, there is learning, right? So those 2-3 things are very key to leading into other things that we need to learn as scientists and entrepreneurs, I think.
I think we can applaud very, very Dr. Pratibha Pandey.